Okay, in this video we're going to learn how to use the trig ratios to calculate the side length of a right angle triangle. In order to do this, we need to be able to use our CAS calculators to give us a value of for the sine, the cosine, or the tangent of any angle. First thing we need to do is make sure our calculators are in degrees. So if you click on this button here that says Doc, and then go to Settings and Status, and then Document Settings, click on that. And you'll see the second option there is degrees, and you'll see there's three options here. So make sure that yours is in degrees and then press OK. Alright, now let's look at where the trig ratios are found on the CAS calculator. So if you see the control button here, just underneath you see trig, and if you click on that, you get a couple different options. The first three are the ones we're going to be using today, so the sine, cosine, and tangent buttons. So if I click sine, and say I wanted to find the value of sine of 60 degrees, so sine of 60. If I press enter, you'll see I get the answer as a third value, or an exact value here. Okay, if I just want to find the answer to a certain number of decimal places, I press on my trig button here, sine, and then 60, and I'm going to do Control Enter, and that's going to give me an approximate answer rounded to 6 decimal places. So the sine of 60 here is 0.866025. If we wanted to say find the tangent of 40 degrees, I would do the same thing, tangent of 40, and then Control Enter. And so the tangent of 40 degrees is 0.8391. Okay, once we're okay with our calculator, we can get on with the rest of the lesson. So our first example is we want to find the value of x correct to 2 decimal places. So in this case here, we're trying to find the value of x, which is this length here. Okay, so we're given that this angle here is 24 degrees, so our first step is that we need to label our sides with respect to that angle. So if that's 24 degrees, then x is our opposite side, so I'm going to mark that with an O for opposite. And this side that we're given here is 40 centimeters, and that is the adjacent side. So I'm going to label that with an A. Okay, the third side there, we don't know it, and we don't want to find it out, so we're just going to leave it for this example. Next thing is you're going to have to know which ratio to use, and the way we work that out, remember, is with our word SOHCAHTOA. So let's write that in, SOHCAHTOA. And because we're working with the opposite and the adjacent side, the ratio that we want to use in this case is the tan ratio. Okay, so let's write that ratio in. The tan, whatever theta is, whatever our angle is the opposite over the adjacent side. And let's fill in what we know. Well, we know the angle in this case is 24 degrees. So we would write the tan of 24 degrees is equal to the opposite side, which is what we want to find out. So that's x, over the adjacent side, which is 40 centimeters. Okay, we can leave the units out for now. And then we just need to solve for x. So in order to get x on its own, this is x divided by 40, so we need to multiply both sides by 40. Okay, so we would do 40 times the tan of 24, and that's going to give us an answer for x. So let's go back to our calculator and put that in. So I'm going to do 40 times the tan of 24 degrees, and if I do Control Enter, I'll get my answer as a decimal, and so my answer there, my answer there is 17, so I'm getting x is 17.81 centimeters to 2 decimal places. Okay, why don't you try this example on your own if you can. So pause the video now. Otherwise, if you'd like to follow along, I'll do this example here. So again, we want to find the value of x correct to 2 decimal places. So label our sides. The side that we want to find out is the opposite side, okay, because that's opposite to the angle 38 degrees. And the side that we're given, that's 7 centimeters, that's our hypotenuse. Okay, so we'll write our favorite word up here, SOHCAHTOA, to see which trig ratio we need to use. And because we've got the opposite and the hypotenuse in this question, we want to then use the sine ratio, because sine is opposite over hypotenuse. So let's just write that down. The sine of whatever theta is, whatever our angle is the opposite over the hypotenuse. And let's fill in what we know. Well, we know that the angle is 38 degrees. And that's equal to the opposite, which is x, which is what we want to find out, over the hypotenuse, which is 7. So to solve for x, I need to multiply both sides by 7. So I get 7 times the sine of 38 degrees is equal to x. So I'm going to go back to my calculator to work that out. 7 times the sine of 38, Control Enter, and I get 4.30963. So to 2 decimal places, I get that x is equal to 4.31 centimeters. Okay, our next example is a little bit harder, and you're going to see why in a second. Okay, we want to, again, find the value of x correct to 2 decimal places. So let's start the same way that we've started the other 2 examples. Our angle that we've been given is down here, 35 degrees. Let's label the side. So the one we want to find out, that's our hypotenuse, and this is the opposite side. So hopefully you remember from the last example that if we've got the opposite and the hypotenuse, we're using the sine ratio. So the sine of theta is equal to the opposite over the hypotenuse. Now this time, when we substitute our values in, we get that the sine of 35 degrees is equal to the opposite, which is 5, over the hypotenuse, which is x, which is what we want to find out. So now x is on the bottom, it's our denominator. Okay, so to solve for x, we're going to have to do 2 steps. First thing, to get rid of that, to get rid of x as a denominator, we need to times both sides by x. So we get x times the sine of 35 is equal to 5. Okay, so I've just multiplied x on both sides. Now, to get x on its own, I'm going to have to divide both sides by the sine of 35. So I'm going to divide this side by the sine of 35. And remember, that's just a number. The sine of 35 is just a number. And I'm going to divide this side by the sine of 35. Okay? So x is going to be equal to 5 divided by the sine of 35 degrees. Okay, and so let's go back over to our calculator and put that in. So 5 divided by the sine of 35, Control Enter, and I get 8.71723. So to 2 decimal places, my x is going to be 8.72 centimeters. So final answer, x is equal to 8.72 centimeters. Okay, so when you've got x on the bottom here, when it's your denominator, when you want to solve for x, what you're actually going to do is you're going to do the other side divided by the sine or the cosine of whatever angle you have. Let's look at one more example with that kind of case. Okay, so again, find x, correct 2 decimal places. So hopefully the first part now you've got to label your sides and work out what trig ratio you need to use. Okay, so I want to find out x, and I'm given this angle is 28 degrees. So x is the adjacent to that angle. And this 19 centimeters is the opposite 28 degrees. Okay, so let me just write here, SOHCAHTOA. And I'm looking for the ratio that is using the adjacent and the opposite side. Okay, so if we look here, 10 is the ratio that uses the opposite and the adjacent side. So let me write out my ratio. 10 of theta is equal to the opposite over the adjacent. Okay, theta in this case, the angle is 28 degrees, so 10 of 28 degrees is equal to the opposite, which is 19, over the adjacent, which is x, which is what we're trying to find out. Okay, like we did in this step before, we're going to multiply both sides by x. So x times the 10 of 28 degrees is equal to 19. And then to work out x, we're going to have to divide both sides by the 10 of 28. So divide by 10 of 28 on this side, and divide by the 10 of 28 on this side. Okay, the reason we get x on its own then is because if you divide anything by itself, the answer is 1. So if I divide 10 of 28 by 10 of 28, I'm just going to get 1x. Okay, so x is going to be equal to 19 divided by the 10 of 28 degrees. And to work that out, I'll go over to my calculator. 19 divided by the 10 of 28 degrees, and then control enter, and I get 35.7338, which rounded to 2 decimal places is 35.73. Okay, so x is equal to 35.73 centimeters. Okay, so that's the video and examples on how to calculate the side length of a right angle triangle. Remember, you have to first label your sides and write out your SOHCAHTOA, work out what trig ratio you need to use, and then solve for your unknown value.